Camilla Parker Bowles is currently experiencing something she most likely did not anticipate. And while I am aware that we have been discussing royal drama for years, this particular circumstance is truly unique. Because this is about two members of the royal family who seem to have quietly and deliberately decided that the time has come to settle a 30-year-old score, rather than a leaked text message or a tabloid rumour. The backstory is crucial in this situation, so let me take you through it from the start. The most common version is that Camilla was the other woman, and Diana was the wife. Charles found himself caught in the centre. That is the version that appears in a two-line synopsis, and while it is accurate, it omits nearly all of the information that truly clarifies the current situation. In August of 1997, Diana passed away in Paris. Her age was 36. The woman she referred to as the third person in her marriage did not vanish when Diana passed away, even though her marriage had already ended years prior to that evening. Charles and Camilla remained close. In May 2023, she entered Westminster Abbey wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, famously Queen Elizabeth's favourite piece of jewellery, after getting married to him in 2025. That moment of coronation was meant to be the last chapter. The rehabilitation was finished, Camilla had triumphed, and the story was meant to be finished. The problem is that Princess Anne never gave the tale much thought. For more than 70 years, Anne has been employed by this family. In 1993, she witnessed the release of the Camillagate tapes. In 1994, she saw Charles confess on national television. She witnessed Diana openly admit that there were 3 people in her marriage when she sat down for the Panorama interview in 1995. She witnessed Diana's death in that tunnel after the divorce in 1996, while the organisation she was a part of debated whether to lower its flags and refrain from expressing its feelings to the public. She has never done so. However, those closest to her claim that after the coronation, something changed. Not exactly anger, but something more subdued than anger, as if a decision was being made and stored for the appropriate time. It seems that February of last year was the right time. The call came from a senior palace aide. 9 minutes passed during the call. It had to do with Camilla. Additionally, sources claim that by the time that call ended, everything had already taken a different turn. Now, I want to be honest about something before we continue. Much of what comes from royal sources is conjecture that is eventually repeated to the point where it seems true. Every conversation and every detail that has been described cannot be independently verified by us. Since that is just not how the palace works, they will never confirm any of this. However, we can examine the obvious trend of what has actually occurred over the last few years, and that trend alone provides a very clear narrative. Additionally, most coverage completely ignores a portion of Anne's personal history, which is crucial to comprehending her viewpoint. Before Camilla got married in the early 1970s, Anne was allegedly seeing Andrew Parker Bowles, a cavalry officer. At the time, it was covered by the British press. It was an actual, documented relationship, and Camilla was the woman Andrew Parker Bowles married in the end. For 50 years, Anne has carried that piece of history with the same flat, disciplined silence that she carries with everything. Information, not heartbreak, as those who know her well will attest. Information about exactly what kind of woman Camilla is and exactly how long she has been comfortable stepping into spaces that belong to someone else first. Thus, Anne was already aware of the pattern unfolding in front of her when Diana joined this family in 1981. Before Charles and Diana's relationship was ever captured on camera, she had witnessed it firsthand. 30 years later, Anne is the only senior royal in this building who possesses both the personal drive and the institutional memory at the same time. This leads us to a room that has received very little attention. The Royal Archives are located inside Windsor Castle's Round Tower. No outside researchers, no documentary teams, and no public access. The unfiltered written record of the British royal family throughout the 20th century, including letters, private diaries, internal memos, and correspondence from within the household during the precise years when Charles and Diana's marriage was subtly disintegrating, is contained without senior-level approval. Few people have the same level of access to those archives as Princess Anne. According to sources, she has been spending time there, going over files from the 1980s and 1990s in particular. This is not the general public narrative that everyone is already aware of, but rather the internal handling, who knew what and when, who enabled the affair, how Diana's complaints were received within the household, and which aides were defending which version of events, at whose expense. It seems that members of the household have begun referring to this as the Windsor Reset. Whether that's staff shorthand or an official name, what it says is true. No book is being written by Anne. She has no intention of holding a press conference. She doesn't work like that. She is making sure that the woman with the keys to the room containing the original documents permanently reframes the official institutional version of events, which is something much more durable. If she completes that task, Diana's sister-in-law will write Camilla's chapter in this monarchy's history, rather than Camilla's allies. William has been managing an entirely different front in the interim. Most people who follow royal drama don't consider the Duchy of Cornwall. But before any of this makes sense, you need to know what it is. This is neither a ceremonial estate nor a symbolic title. Since 1337, the duchy has been in existence. It owns farms in 11 different counties. The Isles of Scilly are its property. It possesses mineral rights, vacation homes, tenant farms, commercial real estate in central London, and an investment portfolio that has been compounding for almost 700 years. The duchy made about £30 million in revenue in 223. And William has direct control over every single pound of that, every property decision and every staffing decision. William automatically inherited the duchy from Charles upon the death of Queen Elizabeth in September of 2022. Those who witnessed what William did next said it was practically surgical. Camilla's younger sister, Annabel Elliot, just vanished from the duchy's financial records. For nearly 20 years, Annabel had worked for Charles on various duchy properties. Depending on the project, her annual salary as an interior designer ranged from £19,000 to £82,000. After that, she vanished. No public dispute, no press release, no statement, just gone. The people William hired to take her place were not impartial professionals. Rather, they were members of his social circle, friends, and the godparents of his children, people whose allegiance is solely to him. Royal pundits took notice right away. Anyone who was paying attention didn't need to be told the message. The fact that William is not impulsive, however, makes this story more nuanced than simply a son defending his mother's memory. This is not a case of reactive feelings leading to poor choices. Those close to William have described him as someone who plays a very long game, is incredibly patient, and is prepared to wait years for the ideal circumstances before making a visible move. And that description is perfectly accurate when you consider the chronology of his actual actions. Charles signed documents in 223, granting William and Catherine the right to receive royal warrants. The formal endorsements that the Crown bestows upon companies and organisations are known as royal warrants, and they serve as a public way for the monarchy to express its approval and alignment. Monarchs have carefully guarded this privilege for centuries. Granting it to William and Catherine while Charles is still alive and on the throne was a public declaration about the intentional shifting of the symbolic weight of the crown. For anyone observing from within the palace, it was not subtle. The redistribution of patronage followed. Hundreds of royal patronages held by Queen Elizabeth had to be redistributed after her death in 2022. It has been a continuous process. According to sources, a number of prominent patronages that were intended for Camilla were discreetly given to other individuals. There was no formal statement or announcement, just a list with her name missing where it was supposed to be. The Parker-Bowles family's access then began to become more limited. According to reports, Tom Parker-Bowles, Camilla's son, no longer received some of the invitations he had previously anticipated. According to reports, his involvement in certain Balmoral events came to an abrupt end following the summer of 2024. By that time, Annabel Elliot had already been kicked off the duchy's payroll. She also ceased to attend a number of seasonal household events that she had been attending for almost 20 years. At every event, Camilla's larger social network, which she had spent 20 years creating around herself, began to appear noticeably thinner. And then there was the Sarah Ferguson situation, which made everything genuinely more complicated. The US Department of Justice's Epstein files included Ferguson's name. Although there is no proof that she committed any crimes, the documented affiliation is genuine, and Andrew's circumstances have rendered any association with that side of the family politically poisonous for anyone attempting to preserve credibility within the organisation. According to sources, William told Camilla to distance yourself from Ferguson publicly and permanently, or accept the consequences of not doing so. Camilla reportedly refused, despite Ferguson's friendship predating her entire royal life. Camilla feels as though she is being told who she is permitted to know when she leaves that friendship due to outside pressure. It is impossible to verify whether that specific conversation took place exactly as it has been described. However, the standoff is real, it's still going on, and every week it doesn't get resolved, Camilla loses influence inside the palace. The detail that caused many people to sit up and pay attention was what transpired shortly before Christmas 24. In Wiltshire, Ray Mill House quietly entered the real estate market. This is Camilla's private country retreat, the garden she publicly referred to as the world's greatest form of therapy. She had owned it before she ever married Charles. It was listed without any statement or announcement, and within 48 hours of the listing going live, it sold. Camilla wanted it gone as soon as possible, not because it was cheap. Individuals do not casually sell their private havens. You don't let go of the place that is solely yours, which predates your title, your public role, and all the intricate workings of palace life, unless your perspective on the future has changed. According to people with knowledge of the matter, Camilla had been clinging to Raymill because she anticipated needing it in the future as a backup address that would remain hers no matter what transpired within Buckingham Palace. She may have done the math on her actual position and determined that she needs liquidity more than a retreat, based on how quickly she moved. And it's worth taking a quick look at that math. As of right now, Camilla passes through Sandringham, Balmoral, Clarence House and Buckingham Palace. 3 of those 4 properties go directly to William upon Charles's death. Camilla is likely to inherit Clarence House, which is estimated to be worth £72 million, and Highgrove, which is estimated to be worth £39 million. Significant by any standard, but it is a significant reduction when compared to the role she currently occupies. At the whim of a man who had witnessed her break his mother throughout his entire childhood, she would go from being queen consort to a private widow living in 2 houses. The fact that she sold Raymill in 48 hours indicates that she has at last come to terms with the reality of that future. Charles is fully aware of everything going on. Regardless of your feelings toward any of the characters, that is the part of this story that is truly depressing to sit with. He knows exactly what his sister is doing. He is fully aware of what his son is doing. According to sources, he spoke with Anne over the phone for 40 minutes in February of last year, but nothing was resolved. His age is 76. After receiving a cancer diagnosis at the beginning of 2024, he has managed to maintain his public duties with genuine discipline over the course of 2 challenging years. However, discipline is not the same as energy, and he would need more to fight a 2-front war on Camilla's behalf, especially since the nation still automatically links her to Diana's demise. According to reports, he told a senior assistant that he understands and that neither William nor Anne are to blame. He just doesn't have a response for either of them. More than anything else in the entire narrative, Camilla is unable to avoid that, because there is no counterweight as long as Charles is unable or unwilling to step in. Nobody in that building has the authority and the drive to oppose William and Anne at the same time. Camilla is essentially on her own when it comes to this. From the inside, that appears to be someone watching her own image being methodically dismantled, not in a single dramatic confrontation, but in 100 quiet decisions, each of which is individually deniable and explicable on its own terms, but which together form a pattern she can clearly see but cannot pinpoint. She has reportedly asked senior aides directly to explain certain decisions. In private, she has brought up the redistribution of patronage. She has questioned why some invitations have stopped coming in. She receives formal, procedural, and final responses. Since no formal declaration has been made, there is nothing to argue about. She can only identify one pattern, but she can't say it aloud without coming across as suspicious. In actuality, that type of pressure is very particular. A pattern cannot be litigated. A feeling cannot be the subject of a complaint. You can't demand a meeting with someone whose whole approach is to avoid confronting the issue head-on. William hasn't spoken out against Camilla in any way. He hasn't conducted an interview. On the record, he hasn't briefed against her. For the past 3 years, he has made decisions that have made his position clear, with quiet, consistent, almost methodical discipline. The institutions surrounding him have simply followed his lead, as they always do when the future king gives a signal. I think people underestimate how personal this is for William, so allow me to bring this back to him for a little while. Most people have seen a picture from September 1997 that shows 2 boys strolling through London's streets behind their mother's coffin. Harry was 12 and William was 15. The sound of hooves on stone was the only sound in the quiet streets. William has never talked about the experience of that walk in public. He's never written about it. People who know him claim that he has discussed it in private over the years in brief sentences. He allegedly told a close friend that the hardest part was not the coffin, but rather the knowledge that the woman who had caused his mother the most pain was still alive, still close to his father, and still on her path to replacing his mother in the family. According to reports, that discussion took place in 1998. He was 16. Additionally, a former household member later recounted another incident from a few years prior, when he was about 13. After seeing the term adultery in a headline, William allegedly asked a tutor what it meant. The instructor remained silent. It's impossible to know if that particular moment actually occurred as described, but considering the child's surroundings, his parents' publicly collapsing marriage, his mother's suffering being chronicled in every newspaper in the nation, and the name of the woman involved appearing everywhere, it sounds entirely plausible. He was old enough to read. He was old enough to comprehend what he was reading. The child is now 43 years old. He is in charge of Britain's most valuable royal estate. He determines who is employed by it and who is not. Which patronages go where is up to him. He chooses who is invited to Balmoral, and in 25 years he has never once shown the public that he has moved past what he witnessed his mother endure. The fact that Camilla did win by all traditional standards is what makes this truly uncomfortable to sit with. She received the title, the marriage, and the coronation. In May 2023, she stood in Westminster Abbey with cameras aimed at her from all sides while wearing the late Queen's tiara. The rehabilitation was finished by the standards by which these things are typically evaluated. Although the institution had officially accepted her and the public had largely moved on, Diana was always the focus of the conflict rather than Charles. Furthermore, when Diana's sister-in-law controls the archives, Diana's son controls the money, and Diana's memory continues to elicit greater emotional loyalty from the British public than nearly anything the current institution produces. You cannot win a war over Diana's legacy. Camilla is losing the battle that was never declared, but she won the one that was visible. When a senior household figure questioned whether the timing of all of this was harsh, Anne reportedly responded with 5 words: "Diana deserves the truth now." Whether that is staff shorthand for something more complex, or Anne actually said those exact words, the meaning is the same. Anne is doing the exact opposite of protecting Camilla. Additionally, when Anne stops protecting someone in this family, the signal is instantly picked up by everyone else in the building. Diana never saw what followed: a tunnel in Paris, 2 motherless boys, and a family that contemplated lowering its flags. However, what appears to be taking place inside that palace at this moment is something she never lived to see. Her son and her sister-in-law moving together, subtly and permanently altering everything Camilla spent 30 years creating. Not through confrontation or public declarations, but rather through patience, access, and the slow institutional weight of those who have determined what the official version of events will say. Diana retains the legacy, while Camilla took the marriage, and those two facts are no longer coexisting peacefully inside Buckingham Palace.